somebody reached out to me and they wanted to know if I thought these two people could break the duopoly. And at first I was like, hells no. But then I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute. They probably could, right? So who am I talking about? I'm talking about Jon Stewart and Stephen A. Smith. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but ride with me because I'm going to make a point. You see, as much as it pains me to look at this, because, of course, this is when their team beat us, the Celtics. Stephen A. Smith shared this on Twitter and said 2028 Jon Stewart. And here is a video of both of them at the Knicks game. Watch this.
Good job. Good job.
Now, one thing I want to say that I never realized when ever before, I've never seen Stephen A. Smith standing next to Jon Stewart. So either Jon Stewart is really short or Stephen A. Smith is really tall. It's just something I noticed when they stood next to each other. It's really interesting. But he posed the question and someone sent it to me and they said, Sabrina, what do you think? And so I really had to dive into it. And I'm going to tell you my perspective. First of all, they're different, but that could actually work. And I'm going to explain why. Stephen A. Smith calls himself an independent. He said he's conservative on some issues, but he's liberal on the social issues. So I think he's conservative on the financial issues, but liberal on the social issues. So he's talked about that before, right? He don't really have the political experience, though. Jon Stewart is to the left of Stephen A. Smith. Now, I wouldn't call Jon Stewart like a socialist or Marxist or anything like that, but he's to the left of Stephen A. Jon Stewart has also been effective at getting legislation passed. Both of them are big names. Both of them have the money to do this independently. Because here's what I think, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. I don't think either one of them would make it out of the Democratic primary. I don't think the DNC would select them. And that's how that works, right? I don't see that happening. But if both of them ran together as independents, I think they could actually break the duopoly. They have name recognition. They have enough money to be able to pay for the campaigning and everything. Not to put it on blast, but Stephen A. Smith makes what, like $20 million a year for ESPN? I think that's his new contract. They have the money to fund it. They have name recognition. And they're different enough that they can pull in different people. Both of them call out the Democratic Party. If you look at this one here, this is a new one from Jon Stewart. And he's making fun of a congressperson's staff, right? So he's telling a story about how a congressperson's staff asked him, what would make a successful appearance on his show, given the example of a lack of authenticity in DC. So he had the Pod Save dudes on there, but listen to what he says.
It was hard to get political people on the show at that time. You get some written book, but mostly it was difficult. They were nervous about it. So we would invite all the press people from senators' offices and congressional people's offices to come to the show in the afternoon. And we would do like a panel with them. I would talk to them and they would ask questions. So it was all the, whoever the press person was for this senator and the press person for this representative. And they inevitably, so my boss, I'd love to have him have a successful appearance on the Daily Show. I think that would be really helpful for my boss. What's your advice on what would make a successful appearance? And I'd go, oh, well, your boss could come on the show and tell me what they think. And then what I'll do is I'll say what I think about what they said. And then we'll talk about that. And they'd be like, so the strategy is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not I'm not telling you a strategy. I'm saying just fucking talk like a person. That's it. It was hard to get political.
So Jon Stewart has kind of been known, like he's been pretty vocal about the Democratic Party not being strong, not being, not meeting the moment with the people, etc. He's been pretty vocal about this. Stephen A. Smith is also known for attacking the Democratic Party, so much to the point that he was called right wing, he was called a Trump supporter, etc. Now, these two people, like, they wouldn't be my pick, but I was asked about it, if they could actually break the duopoly. So that's the question, not whether or not I would vote for them, but whether they could be effective at breaking the duopoly. And one of the reasons why I think they could is because Jon Stewart in particular, like I said, he's to the left of Stephen A. He's spoken out in support of Gaza. I think he could be even more vocal about it, but I've seen him speak out in support of Gaza. But some of the people that he could be able to pull, maybe some of the people that had liked Bernie, or maybe just want something different, he may be able to pull some of the people that support some of the progressive policies, because he supports some of those things. Like, he's criticized like student debt and all those types of things. So he could be able to pull some of those people. Stephen A. Smith, on the other hand, could pull a lot of the moderates, because like I said, in independence, he's fiscally conservative, but he is socially liberal, right? So you can see it now here. Here's Stephen A. Smith calling out the Democratic Party recently, and just to show a point. And this is why I say they would never make it. He would never make it out of the Democrat primary, because he criticized them too much, for one. So the DNC would never give the nod to him. But I think if both of them ran as independents, they could possibly break the duopoly. But listen to what he said here about what the Democratic Party did about Biden.
We wanted to play down what was really obvious to you, what was obvious to me, right? But we weren't in the business of doing what we could to make sure that Biden won, right? I mean, that's really what this was about. It wasn't, I don't think anybody in good faith can say, shit, I didn't know. They really put it over on me. I had no idea that Biden had any kinds of issues with his age or his stage.
Correct.
It's what you chose and how you dealt with people. Do you blame the party, or is this about the media?
I blame both. I blame both, because the party went out of its way to influence the media, and the media went against its obligations to capitulate. And that's not something that we're supposed to do. Now, understand, you're a journalist. I've been a journalist, obviously, for many years and what have you. We understand when you're cultivating sources and you're cultivating relationships, nobody tells every truth that they know. We understand that. But there's one thing to gauge what's important, what is the biggest story, what are must-haves and must-dos, and what is taboo, what to avoid, what to make sure that you don't capitulate and acquiesce to. And that's not what the media on the left did. And I hate to say the media on the left as if I'm on the right, because that's not where I'm coming at it from.
So first of all, this is another thing that I always point out. He keeps saying the left is the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not left, right? So the Democratic Party is still right wing. There's just different fractions of right wing. So I always have to correct that, especially if someone's watching and they're new, right? So he looks at the Democratic Party as left. They're not left.
Coming at it from a perspective where there was clearly individuals in media influenced by the powers that be on the left to ensure that they said there were certain things that they were willing to say and disseminate, and there were certain things they were willing to deny, omit, suppress, etc. And when that's a reality, as it pertains to the presidency of the United States of America, that's bad in and of itself. But it's happened throughout history. I'm quite sure every administration, we can look at it. Where it really, really gets ugly is when we take into account cancel culture and how the slightest thing anybody did, the slightest agreement anybody echoed or verbalized, your job was on the line. Your career may have been on the line. That level of bullying, that fright that they tried to implement into the psyche of members of the Fourth Estate and beyond was as egregious as I have ever seen in my career. And the fact that we now learn for a fact that we're right, that we were right with what we saw, what we were seeing, it just alarms me, and it made me think about Lance Armstrong, because remember, 7 Tour de France titles, we get all of that, right? And you were using performance enhancing drugs and stuff like this, and you denied for many years. We got that part. But you tried to ruin lives of those who were telling the truth. You tried to destroy them. And that's why I brought up Lance Armstrong, because that's what the culture was like before the election.
I agree. I think there's another tentacle off of Lance.
So let's pause here for a second. So here's the thing, right? So look, we all knew that Biden was struggling. We all knew that. We could see that with our own eyes. I think the point that Stephen A is making here is that the media, how they played into it. So the title of this episode is He Distrusts the Media and the Democratic Party, right? So this is why I've said this before. He wouldn't make it out of a primary. And I know some people are like, well, yeah, he should run and he's entertained it and all that kind of stuff. When they say that, they mean him running in the Democratic primary, Democratic Party, and he meant Democratic Party as well. He would not get out of the primary. He's been too critical of the Democratic Party. The DNC isn't going to like that. He's been talking a lot, like a lot. So there's that as well. But the question that was posed to me is that if Stephen A. Smith and Jon Stewart ran as independents, could they possibly break the duopoly? And my response to that is they probably could have a chance at doing so because they have a lot of money and they have name recognition. I wouldn't support them. They wouldn't be my candidates, but they could do it. They could possibly do it. Now, don't get me wrong. The DNC would get hit with they would come with all types of stuff to come after them, just like they did with Jill Stein, just like they did with RFK Jr. There would be a lot of attacks that would come their way. But if they were to do that, they have a chance at doing it. Now, the other thing about Jon Stewart, he has been effective on Capitol Hill at getting legislation passed. And we can't say that for some of the politicians that have been there for years. This goes back to 2022. Jon Stewart celebrates after Senate passes bill to assist veterans exposed to toxins. After a week of anger and criticism for veterans groups and advocates, including the comedian Jon Stewart, Senate Republicans finally agreed to pass a bill that expands health care and benefits to veterans exposed to toxins. So remember, he was like one of the driving forces for that, right? So that is something that I think a lot of people, we can't say that about a lot of people, that he has been able to get legislation passed. Now, again, I want to reiterate this because people like to clip things and yada, yada. They would not be my candidates. Jon Stewart still has to deal with the whole Ukrainian Nazi thing, which I don't think he apologized for that, like giving a medal to a freaking like Nazi. There's that. Yes, he has spoken out in support of Gaza, but I think he could be more vocal at calling out Israel, right? And what Israel is and the creation of it, etc. Stephen A. doesn't know much about that topic. And he'll be the first to tell you he's not really big on that topic, foreign policy, none of that at all. But I think that to answer that question that was given to me, yeah, they probably could, just based on name recognition. No, I think what people have to remember again is this. A lot of times people are voting based on familiarity, right? Who they're familiar with. Name recognition is the big one. This is why RFK Jr. was polling as high as he was when he first announced that he was running. There's a reason why, even though Joe Biden was the incumbent at that time, there's a reason why RFK at one point was polling at 19-20%. Now, just imagine if it wasn't a Democrat that was in the White House during that time. And just imagine if it was a Republican who was president at that time, RFK Jr. probably would have had an even higher polling. Name recognition. So if you have name recognition, yeah, It is going to be easier for you. Friend of the show, Roger Meadows, he tried to explain this to me a long time ago. Again, it's true. A lot of times people vote for who they kind of know. If they know the name, they know you as a oh, okay, yeah, I know that person, and da-da-da. You would think people would vote based on policy, but I've seen this happen time and time again, where a number of people who agreed with all the policies that like Bernie was running on decided to vote for Joe Biden in the primary. People I knew personally. So I would hope that people would put policy first, but the reality is a lot of people don't. So it's an interesting question. I think it could. Now, that doesn't mean they would win, but breaking the duopoly, they could have a shot at doing that. Name recognition is a big one. Something to think about, folks. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.